listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. This week, I want to share a tip that I think will help you make a lot of money in your TPT store. It's probably something that you aren't doing really at all, or you're not doing enough of, and it's a really big money maker, which obviously is exciting because it's all good and well to listen to podcasts and watch YouTube videos and try to get tips and advice, and you're kind of like, oh, is this going to make me money? Is this going to work for me? Like, some things just don't work for everyone. You know, some people really thrive marketing on Instagram, other people use TikTok, other people use blogging, whatever. And everyone's journey is kind of different. So a lot of advice isn't really a one size fits all. And it's really rare to get TPT advice that like really kind of truly applies to everyone and is guaranteed to actually work in terms of bringing you money. Like that's a really hard thing to come across. But I really think you're going to like this episode because this is something you can do that really is guaranteed to bring quite serious good money to your store if you implement it. So I'm really excited to share it with you. So I'm going to start off by saying we are not going to be talking about marketing in this episode. I'm not going to be telling you to start using blogging or email lists or whatever, anything like that. Marketing is great, but it's very much the icing on the cake. And it's very much a unique thing for everyone. Like, some people really thrive in certain areas and other people don't based on their personality. You know, extroverts might do well on Instagram, whatever. Other people prefer having a website and whatever, that's fine. So marketing is very, very complicated. And it's not guaranteed. So no, I'm not talking about marketing today. So you're probably thinking, oh, okay, she's going to be talking about product creation. Nope. Nothing in this episode is about you going to your computer, opening up PowerPoint, like making a brand new product from scratch. I'm not going to be telling you to make another product or keep making products for your store, like going and thinking of new ideas and making something from scratch. Nope, not going to be that. And then you're probably thinking, oh, okay, she's going to talk about optimizing. It'll be something like make more previews or something. No. In this episode, I'm not going to be telling you to optimize your store in any way. I'm not going to be telling you to tweak your SEO or update your covers and thumbnails and previews and descriptions. Nope, I'm not going to be doing any optimizing on your listings. So you're probably thinking, well, what's left? We are going to be talking today about bundles. So now you're probably thinking, oh, okay, well, yeah, I suppose I could start planning out a few future bundles. Like, I could make a certain product, turn it into a product line. I could add to some product lines I already have. I could, think of some new resources I can make and eventually bundle. Like, nope, but that's actually not what we're really going to be talking about either. Because like I said earlier, this is not about product creation. So I am not going to be telling you in this episode to go and make any products that you are then going to ultimately bundle. Like, hey, bundles are great. Go and design some products that you can one day bundle. Nope, that's not the tip I'm going to share today. The really cool thing about this advice, like I said, no marketing, no optimizing, and no product creation whatsoever. You are going to be creating bundles using what you already have. I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that this is going to be a really profitable thing. And that's because bundles in general, no matter whether you're making new products or bundling what you already have, whatever, bundles in general are a really profitable avenue on TPT. Not every buyer buys bundles. Not every buyer can afford to, but a bunch of them do. And they are simply higher price points where you might have like $3 resources in your store. This bundle is $8 or $20, whereas the average resource is kind of like a single resource on its own is limited in how much you can charge for it. Even if you do like quite a substantial unit with lots of different activities and lesson plans, it could cover weeks of content. Like, you're still probably going to be very limited in what you can charge. And it's probably going to be under $20. But bundles allow you to start charging people anywhere from, $5, $10, $15, $20 if you want, all the way up to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And it's just like having something more expensive that people can buy makes you so much more money. So when you might have heard people say this, but bundles are where the money is. And the reality of it is, it's just simply you're selling things that cost more, making more money. It's really, really hard to become like a millionaire. I've said this before. If you're just selling lots of little $2 resources. But when you start selling bundles and selling things at higher price points, you're just massively increasing your revenue here. So you're just going to make more money because you're selling things that are essentially more expensive. And you can't just put the prices up on your $2 resources to $2.50. That's not going to make the same difference here. We're talking about having items that are like $50, and suddenly, like, cha-ching, you make a sale, and instead of making $1.70, you've made $45 or something. Like, that's where the money is when the money starts coming in really large chunks. And it has a lot of value to buyers because, of course, buyers love to solve problems in a big way. It's all good and well for them to get some little dollar deal or put down a couple of dollars and get, a craft or a couple of worksheets, some kind of activity that they can use for like 1 or 2 lessons. And it's just very limiting. But what's really, really cool is when you're solving a buyer's problem over the long term and you can say, hey, here is a bunch of resources that you can now use for weeks or months or years. And it's like, hey, here's a whole year's worth of writing lessons, or here is a month's worth of math lessons, or here are centers that you can use all year long. Morning work, the whole year, done. Early finishes for the whole year, done. 6 months worth of, and it's just really time saving for teachers. And for those that can afford it, it's just such an amazing thing. So I'm just adding that in because sometimes we get, that guilt of, I don't know if I want to start having all this expensive stuff, charging teachers lots of money. Remember, you are helping them because you're actually limiting what you can do to help them. If all you do is offer $2 resources and solve little day-to-day problems, here's one lesson, that's not really making a big difference to that teacher's life. You're really, really making a big difference to them. Sorry, teacher. They could be a buyer in another way, like a SLP or whatever, but the buyer, you're making a really big difference if you can help them over the long term and you can say, hey, look, I have made these centers up for you. You now have a year's worth of centers. You don't have to go hunting for them anymore. You don't have to make your own. You can just print them off and it's like done, and they're going to love that. It's really helpful. So that's just to help you out with the whole guilt thing. And we all feel it. Anyway, a lot of you might already be listening and thinking, okay, I know that bundles are great. I know that bundles bring money. I have bundles. A lot of us do have bundles in our store. But this episode is about getting you to make more bundles and not put it on your to-do list like, I'll think of another product line, or I'll make some new resources that I can one day bundle. Like I said, that's not what I'm thinking of, because the reason I don't want to give that advice is because that's adding a lot to your plate. You probably already have an overflowing to-do list of things to do. And if I say to you, go and think of a new bundle you can make in the next few months and start designing the resources you can make, it may never get done. It's just burdening you with trying to create new resources. You probably already have a lot of fantastic resources in your store. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So in this episode, I want to talk about bundling what you already have. And this is something that you can, stop listening right now and start doing straight away. It's something that you can do in a day. Better than that, you can actually do it in a morning or just an afternoon. It does not take the whole day, but it's something you can get done in one of your work sessions. For me personally, I can do this in anywhere from like an hour to 2 hours or whatever. It's very short in terms of your time commitment. You don't have to set aside a whole day for this, or days or weeks or months or anything like that. Like I said earlier, telling you to go and plan a new bundle from scratch, you could spend weeks or months creating that because you've got to make all these different resources to go in it. Making this whole product line from scratch could take you months. This is not going to take you months. This is going to take you like an hour or two, which is really, really cool. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with this. I love to give advice that is rooted in, actual experience, actual success. I've tried things myself before I just tell you to do it. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I did this and the good results I've been seeing recently. So let's dive in. Recently, I have made 24 bundles. I say recently, I don't want to give the impression that was like in the last few weeks or anything like that. I can't remember exactly when I started, but I'm going to say sometime in the last year at least. Okay, I just went and checked because it was really annoying me that I didn't know. So it was August 2025. So, around in the last 6 to 8 months kind of thing, I've been really getting into this. I say 6 to 8 because I think I did like a one-off couple of them. So I made 1, 2, 3, 4 around that kind of August, September, around that sort of then. And then I paused for a little bit, took a time off, was making some new resources, that kind of thing. Got back into it again, started making like I'm going hardcore with this a bit more like in around October. Anyway, so that is when I started this whole let's bundle what I already have in my store thing. And so, like I said, I've made, over 20 bundles. And these are not things, like I said, that I have been making new resources for. This is getting things I already have listed on TPT, bundling them together in different ways, things I never thought to bundle, things I just hadn't got around to bundling, a bunch of different things. I actually started this off with like a Word document, and I was just simply jotting down ideas. We'll kind of go into this a bit more later, but I planned it out a little first, like what could I do, and then just been gradually chipping away at it. But let's talk about results, because I've been yabbering for 10 minutes now. Let's talk about why this is so great. So I have made about $3,000-ish US dollars from those bundles, which is awesome. If you think about it, $3,000, and I didn't have to make any new products. I didn't have to do any product creation to make that $3,000. Didn't have to post on Instagram or TikTok, do any kind of marketing. Didn't have to go and, tear my hair out frustration of SEO, make any more previews or anything like that. It was no optimizing, none of that. Just made $3,000 from bundling things I already have. Very, very cool. Now, some of those bundles have not performed very well. I'm going to be honest here. You're not going to put up 20 bundles and find every single one of them is hugely, hugely profitable. I find seasonal is very hit and miss in my store. Like I'll have a seasonal bestseller that does really well, makes lots of money, and that's great. So I don't hate seasonal resources, but a lot of my seasonal resources are not good sellers. So seasonal is such a dicey area for my store. And so I tried a few seasonal ones, and like if I just have a quick look now at 2 seasonal ones I made, they have only sold 7 times one of them, 9 times another. And so one made $70, one made $80, nothing crazy. So I just want to be clear on that. You're not always going to get crazy, amazing results from everything you bundle. It's kind of with everything in life, it's kind of hit and miss a little bit. But the ones that are kind of evergreen, the ones that are based on your bestsellers, the ones that are really amazing products put together in a great way, they have potential. And so I have 3 of them out of the 24 that have made a lot of that money, majority of that $3,000 pretty much. And those 3 are quite expensive. So I think that probably is one of the reasons it's made a lot of money, is because each time I sell one, that's, a good amount of money. They have anywhere from kind of lowish conversions to super high conversions. So one of them has a 2% conversion, which is kind of common with expensive products, but that's nothing crazy. One has an 8% conversion, one has a 14% conversion. So they vary a lot in their conversions. And how much they've sold varies too. One of them's only sold 6 times because it's an expensive one that makes decent money. Another one sold 40 times. It really, it kind of varies. I've got, a little bit of a variety in how many I sell. There are, some of these bundles have sold, 50 times, 20, some of them are only 3 times, 12, 0, 10, 20, 30. This, it's a real variety in how many times they sell. So you get it's a mixed bag. But for these 3 that did quite well, one of them made $669.64. Another one made $332.77. Another one made $571.50. And I just want to go back to what I said earlier and reiterate here. I'm only dedicating an hour or 2 to this activity. So I look back at these ones I made in the last few months. I spent an hour or 2 doing something and made $570. An hour or 2 doing something made $300. An hour or 2 made $669. How awesome is that? In terms of ROI, your profitability, making a wise business decision. I have spent an hour or 2 a million times in loads of other different areas, and I've never made close to that kind of money. If you're looking at what your hourly rate is on a product that made me $300, $150 an hour, that's really cool. Or the one that made, nearly $700 it's made me in the last few months. And like I said, I only spent 2 hours, 2-3 hours at most, probably. I can't remember exactly how long, but it's like I said, it's just a couple of hours. And I made $669. I mean, that's a pretty nice hourly rate, even assuming, let's say, worst case scenario, I spent 3 hours in it, which I don't think I do. I can easily do these things in about an hour. But that's, anywhere from $200 an hour to $600 an hour. That's really, really cool. And I just want to make something really clear here. These are resources, but these bundle listings actually have quite low views. So this is not a case of, thousands of people are viewing these, they're not converting super well. This is early days for these bundles. Some of these bundles are actually quite new. they have like less than 500 views. I mean, one of them actually, and this is kind of crazy to believe, only has 83 page views. Like, it's really dismal, but it's made $300. Oh, that's pretty cool. It's kind of a case of like I need to go back and do some SEO updates and stuff like that. But when people are landing on them, they're coming from a bestseller and they're going to this big bundle. When they land on it, they're fairly inclined to buy it, and so the conversions are okay or pretty good or really good, and the earnings are really high. But yeah, ironically, they've actually got pretty low views. Another one actually only has a couple hundred views, like less than 400 views, which is crazy. So, I mean, that's kind of reassuring to know that, it doesn't have to be on TPT that long. It can have really low views, but it can make you serious money. I will say, like I said, not every bundle is going to do this. And I don't want this to sound boastful in any way, like, oh, she made this product that made $700 and she's just rubbing it in. Like, no, I've been very clear that there are other ones here on my product statistics in front of me that have not had that kind of success. Let me see if I can quickly have a look at one. Bundled something, it's made $99. Another one has only made $14. Another one's made $70, $95. Like there's a real mixture here. $70, $30, some are a bit meh. Even if I look at those ones I don't think are super crazy great, in the last couple of months only made $30 or $70. If I look at, again, like hourly rates, like, oh, I only spent an hour on that and I made $70. That's not bad. Or if I only spent an hour and it made me $30 or $40, again, that's not a bad hourly rate. I mean, like, yeah, like worst case scenario, didn't make a huge amount of money, made less than $50, whatever. But like I said, because I spent no more than like an hour or two on it, I'd say that's not a bad hourly rate. And that in the TPT world, we know that we easily blow hours and hours and hours in our business on things that do not have that kind of return. You end up spending 2 hours on something like to do with social media or something, and then it never results in any click-throughs or sales, and like you basically earn nothing. So I feel like I'm really passionate about this because I'm like, this is one of the first times I feel like in my TPT journey where I'm doing something and I'm guaranteed to feel like I'm actually going to get paid well for it. Like it's going to bring me anywhere from like average to really, really amazing money as an hourly rate. And I don't know, I feel really, really passionate about this. I think it's very, very cool. So let's talk a little bit more about these bundles. Now, I've kind of gone on the rant about like, I think they make decent money. Nothing crazy, by the way. Like I know there might be sellers like listening to this that are really established sellers that make thousands of dollars from their products in a short period of time. And no, none of these products have made me like $5,000 in a few months or anything like that. No, we're talking hundreds. But like I said, for bundles that, I just kind of thought, hey, maybe I'll try this and see if it works. Like an unusual thing I'd never thought to bundle. I think that's kind of cool. So I know that there's people earning way more than that, but I just think I'm really happy with that. I think that's cool. So let's talk a little bit about what I did. I didn't want to waste my time bundling things that I thought wouldn't sell. And what I mean by that is like going to my worst selling resources and throwing them together and assuming that if they were in the format of a bundle that they'd suddenly become $1 million making resources. Like it doesn't really work like that. I thought the best thing to do here is to really work with things I know are going to sell well, and I'm just offering them at essentially a different price point. It felt like that was a less risky way to try this experiment. Like I said, it has worked out pretty well, I think, for an hourly rate. But that's probably because, like I said, I'm starting from decent selling resources. So don't go to your store, go to your resources with like the worst views, the worst sales, the absolute worst sellers, and then bundle a bunch of those, because no, then you're not going to get the same sort of results I've mentioned here. I was very intentional with going through my store and looking at things that have potential. So go to your store, your statistics, dashboard, whatever way you want to look at your data, and look at your best selling resources that bring you the highest amount of money, you sell the most, have good units sold, that kind of thing. I didn't worry too much really about conversions or anything. I really just went like, what are my best sellers? What are my decent earners? And work down from that. And then I would look at each individual resource and ask myself, is this already in a bundle? If not, why not? If yes, could it be in another bundle? Could I bundle it in a different way? Like, is there some other resource in my store that would go well with that? Could I, find a way to bundle this somehow? I kind of like wrote down this list of all these resources, starting from my bestsellers, working down, having a bunch of them all in front of me, and then having like a little note next to it, like, okay, it's already in one bundle with one other resource, but like I could totally make a bigger one that includes a bunch of resources. And so I put my ideas there, kind of brain dumped ideas on different bundles I could make. And this activity. Like you need to, like I said earlier about not being fearful of charging people, you need to think big here and go, a lot of the time it's easy just to put one set of worksheets with another set of worksheets. So a $3 resource with another $3 resource and charge $5 as the bundle discount or whatever instead of $6. I don't know. But we want to think big here. Like we want to see those decent returns. You want to think about charging, $20 or $50 or $150 or $200. Like how big can you go? And so I started planning a lot of mega bundles, really large things, and trying to go with like putting together hundreds of dollars worth of resources together, that kind of thing. And so some of the ones that have done the best, I mentioned those 3 that I thought had done quite well, are fairly large bundles, and they include either a lot of products or it just totals quite an expensive total. Or even if it's a small amount of products, they originally themselves, the small products are fairly expensive. So either way, it totals at a decent price point. Interestingly, those 3 have a bit of a variety. One of them's actually less than $20. Another one's around mid $50-ish mark, I think, somewhere around that price point. And the other one's over $100. So there's a real range there. But, the more expensive ones are like making decent money. So definitely worthwhile. But like I said, one of them has a bunch of resources. Another one only has like 2 or 3, I think. But like they just total out at fairly decent price points, more than your average, $3, $5 resource or $8 bundle, whatever. Really, really great. So that's my little action item for you, is to start working with bestsellers and thinking about how you can bundle things. In terms of mega bundles, you're looking at your store as a whole and saying, regardless of whether it's a bestseller or not, as long as maybe there is one bestseller in there or something that can kind of get traffic to this new bundle, is saying, how could I compile a huge amount of resources? Like look at your store as a whole and say, is there a way that I could have all of my kindergarten resources in a bundle, or all of my math resources in a bundle, or all of my units together? So looking at it, I sort of split things up into subject areas a little bit and try to sort of, like I said, a lot of writing resources and ELA and stuff. So I look at that individually and look at the bundles I could do within those subject areas. I also then looked at seasonal, like went through my store and thought, like, is there certain seasonal bundles of things I could kind of pile together in different themes and stuff. I've actually got some here that I haven't made yet, but like are possible ones. I'm like, oh, could I do some kind of seasonal bundle and put all those seasonal ones together? I haven't done a few of them yet, but I've got them on there as a possibility. But yeah, the ones I have tried are mostly kind of in my niche, and I've got a little like ELA and writing stuff. I know that there are some that aren't going to sell as well, because the resources in them aren't as popular. So I've kind of left them till last, just to kind of I think it's good to give yourself, I don't know, you want that kind of boost when you start doing an activity like this. Don't start with the bundle that you have the least faith in doing well. Like if you've got some bestsellers that would work well together, start with that one, because I just think it's nice to start off with a winner. But anyway, think big. Think big picture in terms of your entire store. If you're someone, the average seller often has like 100 resources in your store, you're like, is there a bundle I can make out there that's like this giant mega bundle that includes like 30 or 40 resources, like all of my resources from that subject area, or all of my resources from that grade or topic or theme or season or whatever? Think big, because those expensive ones are really, really awesome. These are some of the ones I made. Just never occurred to me to make. And it's the block that we have, like this mental block, is as teachers, whether you're a former teacher or current teacher, like, we feel weird. The concept of charging like $100 to another teacher feels a bit foreign to us. So it kind of never occurred to me to make bundles even over $100. That just felt like, who's going to pay for that? That's so expensive. Who's going to buy that? Who's going to be able to afford that? Even now, I second guess myself a little bit. I'm like, who would actually buy this? So I don't know that I would ever bought this when I was in the classroom. That's so expensive. But somebody out there will. Not everyone is like you. Not everyone has the same spending habits as you. Sometimes maybe they get funds from their school, whatever. I don't know. So just don't second guess yourself on price. The best piece of advice I can actually give you, I think, is to tell yourself, when you're making a really expensive one, so you're planning out one that's like a $100 bundle and you're thinking, nobody's going to spend this much money. That's crazy. Tell yourself this, even if it's not a big hit and you don't get loads of people buying it, if only one person buys it, that's still $100. How cool is that? Like, you set aside an hour or two to make a bundle. You put this $100 bundle together. You don't have a lot of faith. You're like, I don't know if anyone's going to buy this. This is crazy. And yeah, maybe it's crickets for the first few weeks or months. No one really buys it. when that sale does come in, and it will eventually, like I'm assuming it will eventually, you'll get that ka-ching and you found that you sold that $100 bundle. Like, that is amazing. And that's going to be a really big difference to your daily sales. I mean, how cool is that? Those ones are real, I don't know, they're just like real pick-me-ups, those kind of things are. So remember that. Even if you spent an hour or two on it, even if it only ever sells once, like when it's a high price point like that, that $100 makes that hour or two so worth it. That, even if it only sells once, it's worth it. That's a great amount of money. Like, I don't know, it's really, really cool. That's a great way to think about it. So yeah, I've been talking a lot about this whole hour or two thing. So I want to really quickly elaborate on that before I wrap this episode up. Like I said, it varies. Some of these bundles I could put together in less than an hour. Another one I might actually set aside 2 or 3 hours to do. It varies depending on how many products are in the bundle. If you're bundling 2 or 3 things you just never thought to bundle, yeah, you probably could do that in an hour. If you're putting together a bundle that has like 50 resources in it, you're going to need a bit more time. So the time basically is on the listing. Now remember, the really cool thing about this, we're not doing any product creation. So we're just making a TPT listing. But that hour or 2 or 3 or whatever is you making the preview. It's you writing the description. It's you making the covers and thumbnails. And so when it's a really big bundle, that can take a little bit of time. For me, what I tend to do is photograph things. I actually do a little like photography session because I'm trying to compile resources I already have. I've got to get that worksheet and that craft and like lay them together and photograph them together to make a nice new cover. I'm big on product photography. Maybe make a new thumbnail or 2. Sometimes your thumbnails for these bundles, by the way, can just be the same as your individual resources. If you've got a picture of a craft, you can just reuse that on the bundle. But I find that for covers and maybe for one of the thumbnails, it really is good. And I've done it for all 3 thumbnails too. It is good to do a new photo sometimes and combine the resources so that you're showing more. If you just, you only get 3 thumbnails. If you just put 3 pictures that are from your original resources, maybe that means you're not getting to showcase the other 30 resources in the bundle. So I like to do some new product photography, and that's why I said this is not a 20-minute task. This is gonna me doing that. I might set aside an hour to take some new photos and edit them and stuff. But I often do photos. I think I've been doing that for nearly every single one. Maybe there's a few that I didn't have to. So I do have to set aside some time for photography, and throwing together a new cover and thumbnails, that itself doesn't take super long with my new photos. What I do set aside time for, and this is where some of them, the big ones, really crept up in, how long it took me, was making a decent quality preview for a really large, expensive bundle. That can take time. And I'd be sitting there for like a good 30 minutes, putting all these photos in, trying to make persuasive copy, etc. This is not one of those things where you want to rush. When you're selling a $1 resource, you can put a really subpar preview together and it doesn't matter because people can just impulse buy a $1 resource. You're asking $100 from someone, you need a really, really good, in-depth, detailed description and preview. So that's where the time constraint kind of is. And so I do sit there as well, having to write this quite lengthy description for some of these big bundles. I want to set aside, and again, like a good amount of time for that. So, there's work there, planning out your title and totaling what your price might be. Overall, not a huge amount of time to do this, and certainly a really good reward in terms of your ROI. So I love this task. I think it's so, so awesome. It's one of the things I taught in my SFS Seasoned Sellers program when I was doing that last year. I was like, you got to bundle what you already have. Like, it's so, so valuable. And I like to practice what I preach. That's why I started doing it, because I was like, let's do this together. It's awesome. So in summary, because this episode has gotten a bit long, bundle what you already have. You don't need to make anything new. Go to your store, especially working with bestsellers, starting there, but looking at big picture too. Write yourself a list of all the possible bundles you've never gotten around to making, or you never thought you could, or you never think anyone would pay for it, but just do it anyway. Plan out a bunch of bundles you can make in the coming months, and just set aside a work session, like an hour or 2, whatever, to put together a new preview and a description and stuff. Throw them up on TPT, and then just sit back and enjoy, because I really think this is an amazing task. And I really hope this episode has helped you. I'm sorry it's got a bit long, but I really wanted to dive into exactly how I did it and what I did. And I think it's a really, really great, profitable task. Would love to hear how you go with it. Definitely let me know in the Terrific Teacherpreneur Facebook group. If you have tried this, if you really like this, I would love to hear that it worked for you. Any wins you have, that's always really reassuring and nice to hear. And I hope that you have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.